back to my channel. This is Sassy Rage here. Today we're going to be talking about the state of horror movies and why they're not as good anymore. Really hasn't been any really great horror films that have come out. Um, I think honestly the last good movie I even watched this year was Nosferatu, and the only reason why I say that is because it kind of took a different approach to horror. Um, it wasn't like a funny approach, it wasn't a silly approach. It was a more serious tone where it focused more on storytelling and cinematography. So far that is my favorite horror movie of 2025. I have seen several other ones. Again, not too many have come out between January and now. But let's talk about why this industry is so rough right now. So before I get started, let's talk about my favorite horror movie of I guess I want to say it's 2024 into 2025 since it did come out around Christmas time. But still nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and just throw this in here. But again, Nosferatu was probably the best horror movie I had seen in a while. And the reason why I say that is because it took a very different approach to how it was filmed. I feel like the director really, really cared about the storytelling, really cared about the atmosphere, cared about the character development, um, the attention to details, and the just sense of dread and eeriness of the gothic horror romance trope just really came to life in this film. Uh, the filming locations were beautiful, the costumes were beautiful, the story was believable. Bill Skarsgård's acting was top notch from everything he did in this film. Lily Rose Depp was also a very unexpected, great portrayal in this film as well. So I feel like all around everybody did well. Willem Dafoe was amazing. Um, there's just so many great actors in this film, and I actually felt like I was watching an actual horror movie that had, like, its work put into it, if that makes any sense. I feel like horror movies nowadays do lack a lot of, um, heart, so to speak. They're not scary anymore, which I feel like there's just never going to be a scary movie again like back in the good old days. Um, I would much rather see horror movies move in the direction like Nosferatu did, just on the mere fact that I feel like horror movies need to get back to storytelling. Storytelling ideally is what sells horror, in my opinion. When you have a cast of great characters, when you build up the suspense, when you make it seem more realistic. I don't like a lot of jump scares in movies. I think they're very stupid. Um, Not to say that some jump scares don't work. They obviously do in certain films that are very campy. Um, but I noticed that a lot of like Blumhouse movies and a lot of James Wan type of movies, they always want to rely on cheap jump scares to scare the audience, and that may work for some people. Um, the average teenage girl may scream in the theater with her friends, but if you are an avid horror movie connoisseur, or if you really, really like watching horror movies, you're looking for something that's more on the line of Nosferatu, or something that reminds you of how films used to be made back in the day, when we had great storytelling with The Exorcist, great storytelling with Frankenstein, good storytelling when we had like Audition. International horror films even had great storytelling. Um, I feel like we've kind of shifted away from that. Hollywood has just gotten very, very campy to the point where every horror movie nowadays is just like a cash cow that they try to put out, and they try to put out as many as possible. Um, the only other horror movie franchise that I really like in 2024 was probably Terrifier 3, just because I'm a big fan of gore horror, is what I call it. Sometimes I just love Art the Clown. I just love David Howard Thornton's performance. I think David Howard Thornton is a very, very nice person. So it's very interesting to see how he turns himself into this character. It takes, pantomiming to like a whole other level, which is why I appreciate those movies so much. And yes, it is very gory, it's very out there, but it's something that I enjoy. I can't say the same about a lot of horror movies that come out anymore. Like I'm sick of the Conjuring series. I know there's a new one coming out soon. I'm not a fan of James Wan. I'm so sorry to say, but I'm so sick of all the movies that he's come out with in the past 2, 3 years. There are very, very few movies that really caught my attention from him at all. Even the original Conjuring, in my opinion, while it did have its moments, it just was not the ideal horror for me. That might be something that's meant for other people, but for me personally, I want more of a story. Um, I want more of character development. I want more suspense, more horror, more things that are realistic, um, that are reminiscent of real life. And it's very hard to capture those emotions nowadays with horror films because, again, they're just very, very generic. The story writing is very bad. A lot of the stories are just adapted from other movies. I think the biggest example was Heart Eyes. It literally is just a Scream remake, but with a different character. Um, there was another movie as well. I don't know if it was like a Thanksgiving. I think it was called Thanksgiving. Yeah. Okay. Another slasher movie. Same concept. The guy dresses up as a pilgrim and just hacks people up. Um, Again, I got that vibe with Hard Eyes. It just reminded me of Scream, and obviously Scream is like one of the greatest franchises ever. Um, and of course, it's had its good and bad films throughout the chronological series, but again, that was the OG slasher movie. We don't need remakes of slasher films. We need better ways to tell these stories and make them different and make them original. So, what is exactly the state of horror movies nowadays? I mean, we're already midway through 2025, and honestly, this is so far what we've had. Again, I am not a fan of any of these movies. I know Woman in the Yard just came out, but honestly, it just looks like The Lady in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. It literally looks just like the same thing. I kind of got some sneak peeks of the story. I have yet to watch that one, and I am going to be watching that one. Um, but honestly, it's from Blumhouse, so my expectations are very low on that. Um, I just have a feeling it's just going to be a very generic plot. It didn't really get great ratings. That I think that one came out on like the 28th. But, I'm kinda interested in Death of a Unicorn just because I love Jenna Ortega. I feel like she's really great in, like, campy horror. I would really like to see her in, like, some sort of '80s or, like, '90s horror movie take of some sort, kinda similar to, like, Lisa Frankenstein, which honestly, I love that movie so much because that they took, like, something so classic and turned it into this, like, campy '80s type of, like, cheesy horror movie that I really enjoyed. Um, but like this is like all we have to look forward to so far in 2025. Like I'm so disappointed. Um, the only other one, like Wolfman actually wasn't like the worst thing I've seen. It started off pretty good, and then midway through the film, it just fell apart. Like, I don't really want to spoil it, but to me, it just fell apart, and it honestly could have been like so good. It was definitely a decent attempt at remaking a classic. Um, but I just think it fell apart. I think sometimes, um, how should I put this? Sometimes when movies are made for certain modern audiences, it kind of loses its sparkle a little bit. Um, Again, it was good. I just feel like the writing fell apart midway through. The monkey was actually pretty interesting. Again, I don't like James Wan, so I'll just go out and say it. I didn't really care for the cinematography or some of the cheesy effects. Stephen King has had some great films. Honestly, one of my favorite horror movies from Stephen King is always going to be 1408. I find myself going back to that movie over and over. I also really like his series called Rose Red, that premiered on TV a while back. He's got a lot of great films, but The Monkey actually was okay for me. Again, there was a lot of things that I would have done differently in that film. It could have been good, but again, I feel like probably James Wan just ruined the whole thing. Um, I feel like James Wan has a tendency to take people's stories and make them terrible. Like, no offense to him or anything, but um, a good example is Night Swim. I saw the original clip of Night Swim on what it was based on, and honestly, like, the little original short on YouTube was so good. If you haven't seen the original short of Night Swim, go and watch it on YouTube. It's so good. And honestly, like, that was way scarier, that, like, 10 minutes, than that whole entire movie he made was. Like, he just ruined that movie. It was so stupid. It was so ridiculous. Um, like, I honestly never wanna see that movie again. I can't believe, like, he ruined that person's, like, creative, short film and made it into that. Like, it was just so bad. But that's besides the point. I just don't feel like these movies are, like, that good, and we're already, like I said, halfway to 2025. Maybe as we get closer to Halloween and Summerween, we'll get some pretty good horror movies coming out. I really don't wanna see any more remakes. I don't wanna see any more Woman in the Yard, Lady in Black, Scream remakes. I wanna see something different. I wanna see something more like on the lines of Nosferatu. I wanna see more classic horror, being adapted. Really looking forward to Guillermo del Toro's rendition of Frankenstein. I really love Guillermo del Toro. I may do a separate video on just horror TV shows because honestly, there's been some really good horror TV shows. And honestly, I also think that a lot of horror TV shows have been a lot better than some of these movies. Guillermo del Toro directed The Strain and he wrote The Strain. If you're a big Blade fan and you know what I'm talking about, The Strain was like one of the greatest series ever. And when it ended on FX, I was so sad. But it was like one of those, the most entertaining take on vampires I had seen in a while. But that's a video for another day. I think I'll end it here. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be doing a lot more reviews. My next video might focus more on TV shows and horror. I do have a lot to say about that. So hopefully you guys will tune in for my next video. Thanks for watching.